This is President Macron from France, Angelina Jolie, the actress, and Warren Buffett, the investor. Oh, sorry, that was the B list. We've actually also got an A list. So for our closing, we have Eric Fernandez from the World Bank. Please come and join us. Our very own Warren Buffett. We have Joy Abraham from Seafu. Absolute delight to welcome Salvador Nieto, the Executive Secretary of CCAD from El Salvador. And our very own rock star, Robert Nassi, the Director General of CIFOR. You can see why we call this the A-list. So Eric, how's the 2 days been for you?
Thanks very much for this opportunity. It's been inspiring for me, actually. I started my career very young. I'm Kenyan. I grew up in northern Kenya. I ran with my nomad community friends. I learned a lot from them. And then I went to school. And I was rather disappointed, I must admit, in some of the curricula that I was faced with. But I learned so much just listening to all of you, both in the formal sessions and in conversations out in the garden and in the corridors, that it left me inspired, I must say. That's not to say that the challenges we face are not large, but I learned very early from communities here in northern Kenya, and when I went to work in the Amazon, in Peru and Brazil, and then when they shipped me to Sumatra to work with the transmigration program that was in place, there is such a rich heritage and knowledge base that is inherent in our communities, in the mothers and women that hold families together, that prepare children for the future, both in terms of how they are guided and fed so that they get all the essential micronutrients and proteins and vitamins at an early stage. And that's really critical, because if you don't get those essential nutrients and micronutrients and vitamins, then your cognitive capacity doesn't develop. So if you have a mind of a 6-year-old and you look perfectly healthy as an adult, that is really a serious issue that we face. And a lot of the sessions we've had here have referred in various ways to the importance of nutrition in the restoration agenda, and how we structure our nutrition, how we structure the restoration agenda to take account of, through the diversity of species, through the diversity of landscape niches, through the diversity of continental teleconnections, what happens with wind currents, air current, ocean currents, the movement of species, the movement of invasives, diseases, as we're seeing. All of that you have touched on, and I've really been impressed at the vision that Africa has, especially because there has been a focus on Africa. And I think we can move forward with a certain amount of confidence. That's not to say that the task is not huge, as I said before. So I've said this in another session this afternoon. I somehow feel that this conversation should have taken place 3 decades ago, just because where we are now in terms of what's happening with the planet. So let's not underestimate the challenges, but in the challenges are opportunities, and if we come together and work together institutionally, so there's the diversity, governance-wise, also a multitude of diverse opinion systems, and community inclusion. Children, youth, teenagers, families, women, all of us need to really work together, because otherwise we have a problem. And I'll close on the other issue that in the last week, there have been several scientific papers that suggest we have less than a 5% chance of attaining a 2 degrees centigrade or staying below a 2 degrees centigrade world. So how many people here would get in a bus or a train or a car or a plane if it only had 5% of chance of arriving at its destination? Right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Very poignant comments. And so we turn to Joy Abraham, who's with the Center for Earthworks. Joy, we've had 17 parallel sessions, we've had 6 plenaries, we've had 7 side events, landscape talks, launch pads, breakout groups, networking events. What particularly stands out in your mind?
Hello. Hello. Good evening to us all. Good evening to us all.
Good evening.
Okay, that's more like it. I am really honored to be here. A lot has happened these few days. We're not the same. We're not the same people that walked in through those doors. So, dear you, I must mention, probably off official records, but preferably from a delicate lens of my heart's witness, that during the course of the workshop and the GLF, I have heard stories about young people who took hours of stressful transit experiences to be present here in Nairobi, who took days, a particular one, weeks, or should I say a week, sorry, whose flights got delayed and denied, having to foot their own bills, but still making it here. I watch many young persons relate with culturally and socially different people, dig into totally strange dishes without puking. If you're not clapping already, I might just take it all over again. These to me are just the heroes we've been waiting for. So I'll simply title this speech, The Arrival of the Restoration Heroes. Okay, my name is Joy Abraham Ogoma from Benue State, Nigeria. I'm a writer, I'm a poet, who is greatly propelled by nature. I am a mother to a handful of younger people, figuratively, and greatly obsessed about an educationally reformed mind of the African child. Environmental conservation has been my weapon and equilibrium for accomplishing this. I am the communication officer at Center for Earthworks, a youth-led organization concerned about securing the earth. This week, about 100 young people and minds came together physically, with many actively online, for a 2-day leadership workshop, sharing motivations and passions as they settled in for one single reason: the restoration of African landscapes. This life-rewarding opportunity, strategically organized by the GLF and the Youth in Landscapes initiatives, engaged participants through explicit motivating speeches by professionals and new venturing people in both closely and broadly linked fields to land restoration. This was strategic and intended to leave none of the participants with a single excuse, to why they might not be restoration ready. It was no surprise that when defining land and restoration, our groups arrived at unique phrases like people, home, stakeholders, resilience, institutions, culture, livelihood. These diverse perspectives constructed our formidable model for restoration readiness, what we call the spider web approach. This spider begins its web knowing one's landscape, integrating both ecological and indigenous knowledge. It progresses towards the inclusion of all stakeholders, further crafting its web in alignment with standing policies and in collaboration with relevant institutions, considering economic functionality before finally, or shall I say finalizing, management approaches. The spider seamlessly weaves across all pillars, never staying within one, building the strongest web, what we call restoration readiness. Our model speaks to smart work beyond hard work, taking that every one of us have now defined our collective next steps. Each action perhaps is a unique way, but a common goal, acting as a good nuisance in the face of every lackadaisical forest and land stakeholder. Because we refuse to act in isolation, we will dig into the uniqueness of us, this strength we have, knowing that our first opportunity is the privilege to serve. Maybe you should tell your neighbor, your first opportunity is your privilege to serve. So dear you young person listening, quoting one of the speakers in our workshop, when a needle falls into the well, many will look down at it, but only a few will go down and search for it. To add to that, I say, many will actually hang around the brim of the well, and they're going to act like they're actually going to look for the needle. They'll shout out orders like, "Get me a long, fat, brown, shiny rope so I can go down to get that needle." This won't come by self-fulfillment, poking accusations at financial and governing stakeholders. We have refused to dance to that beat again. We are making do with every efficiency available, taking innovative postures to making our passions edible. We must know first, or also, that our passions are likened to a pregnancy in our bellies. Now, does a pregnant woman, does she say that because she has not been given enough cash funds, enough gifts, enough stipends, told well done by her spouse, friends, society, and family, that she would not make use of her inbuilt strength to put her baby to bed? No. This week, the convergence of our passions has bettered an action plan of our contributions over the next 2 years. Strategic, specific, measurable, and actionable items in our 4 priority areas, which are social entrepreneurship, education, and capacity building, policy advocacy, and lastly, leveraging partnerships. This plan, this week, this group marks the arising of a movement, taking up diversified case studies of our African lands and highlighting structural ways to reclaim them. We will do whatever it takes. Do these indigenous people want us to whisper? We will whisper. Will they prefer that we dance? Dance we will. Do they prefer that we learn to eat a little from their sacred pots of gathered heritage? Yes, we, every zealous one of us who have dared to be present at this workshop and forum, will make them know that they matter so much in this movement, and the best they will do is help us help them. Our innovative skills will know no bounds, from the media to schools to villages to conglomerates in the cities, to every air, to every location, everywhere that air is breathed. Finally, dearest you, just as the recently concluded International Youth Day talked about safe spaces for youth, our question to you all, young mind, is, will safe spaces be achieved on a platter of ease by the youth? We are restoration ready, And I trust that we will be those ones who take the courage to go down to our soil, to soil our hands for good, to find this quick fading needle. This is our clothing. This is our dignity. This is our land. Thank you very much.
Wow, Joy, you've overwhelmed us. How often have you seen such wisdom on such young shoulders? Please give Joy an extra round of applause. So, Salvador, we've had 2 days of very strenuous meetings and much longer preparation. We have a lot of challenges before us. How soon will we fix it? A week, a month, a year, a decade?
Yeah. Good evening. Yes, these 2 days have been very productive and has been a great experience for me coming from Central America till Nairobi, and I think this is the kind of experiences and discussions that are very useful to find common solutions in these issues. And regarding how long, maybe a decade would be a good time frame. And in that sense, I want to share a few words with you regarding an initiative that, as you probably know, has been designed or started to discuss in Central America, and specifically was a proposal from El Salvador. It was a proposal from the Minister of Environment of El Salvador, Madame Lina Paul. And when I was preparing these ideas, we were discussing with Minister Paul, and she told me that there were three big ideas or three processes that she is aware that motivates her to present the proposal. The first one has to do with we need to recognize that ecosystem restoration has taken a high relevance in the international agenda, and this is easy to look. We have several instruments, from legally binding to another more voluntary agreements that has to do or deals with the restoration issue. The second one has to do with the experience of the Central American countries, including El Salvador, in the mechanism of the bond challenge. The Central American countries has been very active in this mechanism, and they have made pledges that for a total of 7 million hectares, and that is an important number if we take into account that Central America and Dominican Republic are only 500,000 square kilometers. And the third one has to do with the experiences accumulated in the process to prepare the national plans for restoration, and those are processes that are right now being developed in different levels of stages for all the countries in Central America, including Dominican Republic. So those ideas make the government of El Salvador, and then they get the support of the Central American integration system to propose a decade for international restoration. And you can ask what makes relevant to El Salvador, to Central America, and to the international community that kind of mechanisms. Well, we can identify at a previous stage some benefits of such a decade would be. We believe in Central America that this declaration in the United Nations General Assembly will allow to the international community to provide a common vision and a flexible framework for the implementation of ecosystem restoration initiatives at the national, regional, and global levels. Also, we could succeed in mobilizing and channeling the necessary means of implementation to support the implementation of national restoration strategies, including South-South cooperation. It will allow to the international community also monitor progress in the implementation and achievement of milestones at the national and international levels. The construction of public awareness on the importance of functional ecosystems and healthy land and marine landscapes for human well-being and productive activities. Achieving a full understanding of the impact and relationship between the dynamics and functions of ecosystems and their services on economic sustainability, local development, and the well-being of rural communities and the countries as a whole. And finally, it will allow to recognize that the ecosystem and landscape restoration initiatives under comprehensive and synergistic approaches represent an effective instrument to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in Agenda 2030, particularly SDG 15, and significantly support the achievement of SDGs 2, 6, 12, 13, and 14. And to finalize with this, the Central American countries are asking for the international community for the support to get an international decade for restoration in the United Nations system. And yesterday I had the opportunity to talk with some ministers of Africa, and I feel their interest, their motivation, their support, that we hope it will be reflected in the United Nations offices in New York. Thank you to all, and thanks again to the organizers for this excellent event, and we will be in touch for sure. And when you want to go to Central America, you have a friend there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salvador. Now, it was a bit of a lukewarm response. We're going to measure the success of the call for the decade on ecological restoration by the sound of the applause. And San Salvador, the capital of El Salvador, is a long way away. In 3 weeks' time, we have the United Nations General Assembly, where El Salvador seeks to persuade and lay out the case. And we would like to endorse that proposal from El Salvador, and it's going to be judged by the volume of applause in the room. Should we endorse it? I think we can take that as unanimous. Okay, to our final closing thoughts from Robin Nassy, the Director General of CIFOR, the organizer, the energy, the leader behind this. Across all countries in Africa, if you destroy man-made property or woman-made property, that is called vandalism, or it's called criminal damage. But if you destroy something natural, that's called progress or development or a trade-off. So, Robert, what are your thoughts on how we can solve this enigma in Africa and put much higher value on those natural landscapes?
Thank you, Tony, for asking me how we save the world. I mean, when we started this discussion about the Global Landscape Forum to be organized in Nairobi in 2018, many people were looking at it, why would you organize these things in Africa? It's much easier to do it in Europe or to do it in the US. It's a bit, but that's the point. I mean, it's sort of, we are going to talk about restoration in Africa, and we want to have African in the room. We don't want, the thing is moving by itself. Sorry. We don't want to have only people from Europe or North America. And so we should be discussing about Africa in Africa. And so we decided to organize that in Nairobi. And here we are. A few numbers, just to give you an idea. We had, and people were skeptical. I mean, you will never get enough people. So you had 1,100 people registered to attend this meeting. We had physically 790 persons in the rooms and in the campus. And we also had 24,000 website visits. We had 26 million people reached via Twitter and Facebook. We had the engagement in the form of likes, share, retweets, and comment, 20,000. We have had yesterday 10,274 views on YouTube and Facebook. And we have been the trending on Twitter in Kenya for 3 days straight. So when someone tells you that you cannot organize a conference in Africa, you can see that it's not the case. We have discussed about restoration. Of course, that was a topic. We discussed also about social innovation, rights, tenure, gender, monitoring, what is success, how to finance success, what we need to do in terms of policy. We had a very inspirational contribution by young people, the youth. We have done a lot of networking. You just had to go outside and see people really engage in discussion. There was a sense, there was a feeling, there was a dynamism that we have considered that we have done a good job. So, having achieved that in Nairobi, what's the next step? So, the first next step in terms of the GLF is what we call the big GLF, or the GLF event in Bonn, that will be at the beginning of December, and where we will take the lessons and the knowledge and the wisdom coming from this GLF to feed in the global process. This will happen on the 1st and 2nd of December in Bonn, and you will soon have the concept note and the program online. And because we also have an important event in Poland after the UNFCCC COP in Katowice, COP24, we will also organize a special half-day event in terms of climate action in the landscape. So this is our upcoming program. But I could not finish my talk without thanking all the people that I have made this possible. Of course, I mean, a sort of our colleagues from UN Environment, the World Bank, ICRAF, all the other coordinating partner or funding partner of the GLF, our funding partner, the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the German Ministry for the Environment, our own CGIAR, the Forestry and Agroforestry program, Liquid Telecom, first time we had a connectivity sponsor, the United Nations office in Nairobi staff, and I think we can thank the interpreters that are still working hard. And a clap of applause for the interpreters. The government of Kenya that has been so welcoming and participating. All ourselves, so we can give ourselves a good of applause. And I will have to give a special thanks to the GLF team, and I will ask them to stand up, the one in the room. The GLF team, including the science part. Don't be shy. And then the most interesting and the most innovating one in terms of GLF, and we are here trading uncharted territory, we are going to have a rock concert, no, reggae concert. And we have Rocky Dawuni, and you could hear the beats from time to time, they are a Ghanaian singer, songwriter, and an environmental activist that will perform in a couple of minutes for us. So please join him in the ground outside of the main building. And at the same time, because we're also trying new things, we have started a crowdfunding initiative to raise money for landscape restoration. And you have seen at the beginning, the first session, the vision, the voice of the landscape. And we have decided to see if we can do some crowdfunding initiative to contribute to the restoration movement in Africa. And the money that will be gathered via this crowdfunding will be redistributed to the community that have been participating in this voice of the landscape. This is the first try. We don't know how much we will get, but you have the website, you will have an announcement, you can contribute, and that will be your contribution to landscape restoration in Africa. Thank you again. This is the end of the Global Landscape Forum, and see you for the next one.